Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. I'm here with the contest crew, Chris, KL9A, Randy, K5ZD, and Bill, W9KKN. Dan, N6MJ, is in a plane somewhere, couldn't make it, but he'll be with us next week. Ever since we started doing the contest crew weekly conversations, we've gotten some pretty strong feedback and some questions, and this week we're fielding one. What's your best advice to a technician class ham radio operator who wants to get involved in contesting? And upgrading can't be the answer. Knowing that the future of contesting and ham radio in general relies upon people starting from where they are, we thought we'd tackle this question. Randy, why don't we start with you, and you can maybe begin with the obstacles that a technician faces in contesting.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, incentive licensing gives you a lot of incentive to upgrade, to answer this question. So that I assume we're talking about HF contests, because in VHF the techs pretty much have all the bands and all the modes, so it's not really an issue there. But in HF contesting, it's very limited. The technicians have privileges on 80, 40, and 15 meter CW. They've really got, the whole from 025 on up. So lots of room. It's just unfortunately the technician license doesn't require people to know the code. So it's a place people can learn. But if you could do CW at all, you can participate in just about every contest because of those bands. The band that's really interesting is 10 meters, because here you have CW, RIDI, and data from 28.0 to 28.300, and then sideband from 300 to 500. So you can get in every contest. CW contest, the RIDI contest, the Digi contest, the sideband ones, and there's all kinds of choices there. And at this part of the sunspot cycle, if I was a technician and I wanted to participate in contests and have fun, that's where I would look, is which contests have 10 meters included and would be open this part of the sunspot cycle.
And just taking that a step further, would you look at contests that have a single band category?
Well, I think you're going to end up in that mode in that category no matter what. So yes, if the contest has single band categories, then you do 10 meters, you enter single band 10. If the contest is all band or they don't have single band categories, you can still work 10 meters and submit a score. And in some cases, depending on how the multipliers are done and so on, you may not give up that much by not having the other bands. It really depends on the contest.
Chris, any thoughts from you?
I always have thoughts. Uh, you know, not to sound old, but when I was growing up, the technician class license was like a gateway drug. You'd get on the novice bands for CW, and then you'd work something cool, and you're like, oh, I need to get more privileges to work this and this and this. But with 10 meters open, you can work the world with what you have, which is cool, like Randy said. I think it's definitely should be looked at as we can be competitive now, maybe on 10 meters, but in 3 years you're going to want to have more privileges. So the answer is maybe not to upgrade, but maybe upgrade later. When I got hooked on satellites, which are not there anymore, though the geostationary ones, and I had a raging pileup from Europe on the satellites, and I was like, oh, I want to do that on HF. Well, I couldn't because I was a no-code tech. So that was my gateway drug. So I think the technician contesting would be a great way to get used to it, see how cool it is, and then when 10 meters slows down, you're going to want to get on these other bands.
So speaking of gateway drug, I've interviewed a lot of people that said they got their start with the Novice Roundup. Is there any replacement for the Novice Roundup, anything close to that?
Yeah, the ARRL does have a couple of contests that are specifically tailored to newcomers on different modes. I think there's a CW only one, a sideband only one, a digital one. So that's one possibility. But I think what made the Novice Roundup so special back when it was happening was a lot of us were licensed when we were in school. And the contest lasted 9 days long. And so you could get on the air after school or get on at different hours. You weren't kind of compressed into one short stint. And we all had crummy antennas and low power, so it may have taken that long to actually get a couple hundred QSOs under our belt. But it's a little bit different now. But I think the key it's really all about 10 meters. And the fact that you have RTTY and data available to you completely, I think there's a limit of 200 watts or something, but there's a Digi contest coming up at the end of August, the Worldwide Digi contest. So you could work a bunch of people on 10 meters in that. There's the CQ Worldwide RTTY DX contest, which happens the last weekend of September. Always has a ton of activity. You'll find RTTY signals going everywhere from 28080 up to 28130. And just about all the daylight hours plus a little bit. So there's plenty of people you can work on RTTY. And if you've got the equipment to do Digi, to do FT8, you've got everything you need to do RTTY, just a little bit different software, but it's the same thing. You're going to feed audio in, decode it, and then do audio back out to transmit. And then lastly, the CQ Worldwide, the last weekend of October, a huge contest, DX coming from everywhere. And that 28300 to 28500 is pretty prime real estate for DX stations because they want to get into the US band and hold a spot where they can work everybody. Extra, general, advanced, but especially the novice and technician station. So that's a contest that actually people try to get into that spot and hold a frequency just so they can get access to all the technician operators. So even with just 10 meters for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, there's plenty of things you can do to stay entertained on a lot of weekends. You know, we go past the Worldwide at the end of October, then there's another Digi contest the first weekend of December. And then we have the ARRL RTTY Roundup, which happens at the second weekend of January. So again, another chance to do RTTY on 10 meters and work people. And then we get into WPX RTTY and the ARRL contest. So there's something almost every month or every other month where, as a tech, you can get involved in RTTY or phone contesting.
Bill, anything to add?
I kind of really badly want to break the rules here, and I want to say, if you look at the tests between technician in general, it's like 15% difference in difficulty. If you had to ask me, like looking at the questions. For the investment that you would put into, getting ready an FT8, getting an HF station, putting up a 10-meter antenna, all of that, I really feel like if you spent a week on it, you really could go to general. And I mean it. I mean, I hope you haven't just talked yourself out of that possibility. But the other thing that I would encourage you to do is you don't have to necessarily do this alone. If you know of somebody who has a local multi-op, maybe you could show up there and watch them operate or learn a thing or two from that group. And they would be more than, if you're, committing to get interested and get hooked in this, more than likely they'd be more than happy for you to, Y in and listen and maybe even make a couple contacts. They have to be a little bit careful because if they're the, control operator and it's, it's a DX competition and technically you're getting in kind of this third party, relaying world that, you have to exercise a little caution with. But other than that, I would say that might be another way that you could get involved potentially if you're so inclined. I would say to make matters worse, if we're talking about ways you can kind of get into this, if you're upgrading your license, you realize that when you take the FCC test, that the exact questions and answers are public. Okay, it's just you don't know the order, right? But when you're studying these exams, it's not just a question that you're going to be asked like the question in the pool that you're studying. It's exactly the question. I mean, there are a lot of people who memorize the test, and it's one of these things where you can say, oh well, you should have learned the theory. You should have spent all this time doing this. And my argument is that a FCC license is a license to learn, and a lot of these things you're going to learn as you build a station, as you buy a radio, as you get on the air. I mean, besides just the basic rules and the allocations that you have, which you can look up on the ARRL website and find where your privileges end and such. I would encourage you to do whatever you can to get that license because you're just opening up this entire other set of possibilities. Now, again, if you have somebody, that's a guest operator and they only have a technician license, honestly, maybe get them on an HF contest, maybe get them hooked or something like that. But really, the priority in my mind would be to just upgrade. That would be my personal push in that situation.
Go ahead. Kevin had one rule.
He had one rule, and I broke it. I broke it.
We all broke it.
I think it took less than 7 minutes to break it, so it's okay, Bill.
Well, that sounds about right.
So I guess the one thing I wanted to ask, I know we're a ways away from the ARRL 10-meter contest, but obviously if we're talking 10 meters, maybe we can talk a little bit about that contest and some of the tactics or strategies you all use in that particular contest and how that might translate to a technician that's getting ready to do that in December.
I think all the contests on 10 meters, that things kind of work the same way. The band's open to the east in the morning, to the south in the midday and afternoon, and then to the west at the end of the day. So you occasionally will see some unusual things. You'll occasionally see some different openings early in the morning or late in the evening after dark. But for the most part, it's about that simple. And like I said, in all these contests, everybody wants to get into 28,300 to 28,500 to work all the U.S. guys and all, including the techs. So there is prime real estate where people want to work you, and then it just comes down to what kind of station you have. And 10 meters is a fairly easy band to get a beam up of some kind, even if you're just turning it by hand. It's not a giant antenna. It's an easy thing to erect on a part-time or temporary basis. And 10 meters is a band, again, because the antennas are small and easy to put up, where a beam is worth some effort. You'll do much better with a small Yagi than you would just trying to use a dipole hanging out in a tree in the backyard. I mean, you'll work guys either way, but it makes enough of a difference to be worth some effort.
I've had these experiences on 10 meters at ND7K and other places where if you have where the band will sort of have the spotlight propagation to one area in particular at a time, and it'll kind of move around. Like you might have 10 minutes where you're only working VE3, okay, and it just sort of happens to turn out that way. And it's been interesting where I've had these pileups of people that were operating in their car with a mobile rig and just saying, "Hey, you're really loud," and I heard, I just kind of happened to be tuning past you and heard you on this band, and you're the only signal there, and you're where again? Really? You're in Arizona, and these guys were in North Carolina or North Florida or something. It's a very 10 meters is a very interesting band for some of these very long distance contacts, and then we've been seeing less of it in the last couple of months, but you also have these north-south paths where these trans-equatorial paths where you'll suddenly work, Brazil or Argentina or something like that, and they'll be 100 over 9 just for the summer afternoon or wherever that happens to occur. It's a very exciting band.
I think one of the things from an operating perspective is you like anything, you need a little bit of patience. There will be times where you find somebody and you call them and they just have a lot of guys calling. And because 10 meters can be open so broadly, you might be, let's say it's 11 o'clock in the morning, you're calling some guy in Brazil. He's hearing all of Europe and all of the USA, and there might be 50 guys calling him every time, and you just call and never seem to get through. My advice there is call a few times. If you don't get through, go keep tuning. Find somebody else. There's a lot of people on the band, and if you just keep making your way around, you'll eventually get to them all, or you'll get there at a time when no one else is calling. It's amazing as a DX station running people on 10 meters, you'll have all these loud guys calling, and then there'll be some time where nobody calls, and there'll be one really tiny signal in there, and you get the call, and the guy, both of you are thrilled because you made the QSO, and he has no idea how weak he was compared to everybody else, but it doesn't matter. He made it through.
It's a very quiet band.
Yes, if you have no line noise. And it's like, that is one thing you start to really notice on 10 meters is the line noise can be pretty bad, especially in certain directions from your house. And if it's in a prime direction, like towards Europe or Japan, you might notice it a lot.
I guess I would encourage people to think about maybe what we talked about on the field day episode about etiquette for calling guys and waiting properly and phonetics properly and those kind of things. And remember that, if you're on 28450.4, you're not off frequency. That's okay. You can be on any frequency there. So tune them in correctly. Don't go to a whole digit, because that'll just make it way harder to break through. But basic operating stuff like that will go a long way, especially if you're just limited to one band. Maximize your time there.
Well, guys, I appreciate you tackling that question. And before we wrap up, could we just take a quick trip around? What's going on at your stations? What are the contests you have on the short-term horizon? Chris, with you?
Current things at my station is we're trying to build my station. So that's where we're at. Next contest, I don't know. The next big contest is Worldwide Phone at the end of October. I don't really do the digital stuff at all. Not really. I just don't. And then we have some big multi-ops for the fall. But really, we're focusing on building and putting up big antennas and not spider beams.
What Chris hasn't said is he spent some time this last weekend in a hole with a concrete truck dumping concrete in on his feet.
4 holes.
Yeah, we don't want to lose count.
It's some guys can pay someone else to do it, but I have to put sweat equity into it. So we definitely have plenty so far.
Is anyone doing Worked-All Europe?
Yeah, I will be on for a while.
I'm thinking about it. I mean, it's a little tough from the West Coast, but I might get on and do some of these special QTCs and have all kinds of fun with that.
Well, we should talk about that in a future episode, because
QTCs
are one of these things that are incredibly obvious once you know what they are, but they make no sense until then. As far as my station goes, I haven't done any work at all because my wife is still trying to talk me into moving to Ohio, so I'm in no man's land. I've got stuff I want to work on, but I don't want to work on it if I'm going to be taking it down sometime soon. And I did a big effort in IARU, and there's a really interesting contest this weekend. I won't be home for it, but the Islands on the Air contest always has a lot of activity, especially from Europe. But next one for me will be WAECW, just to try to get some more WRTC qualifying points.
I'm pretty much in prepare for the next thing mode, and that's going to be worldwide and ZF1A, both CW and phone, and just worrying about, okay, what antennas are we going to work on? What are we when are we all going to arrive, and all of those little logistical things, and what's not working in the shack. We're trying to start to test things out and remotely just see where we stand. Right, we had a near miss with a hurricane, and looks like largely the station survived pretty well, but I'm sure we'll find things that are connectors that have corroded and oxidized, and just pieces that are hopefully it won't be more work than we that we have time for before the contest, but I think we'll be fine.
There's always more work than there's time for. It doesn't matter however much time there is. There's 10% more work.
10%.
10%.
Well, I didn't want to completely psych them out.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this week. We'll see you next week. I've been talking to the contest crew, Chris KL9A, Bill W9KKN, and Randy K5ZD. We'll see you next week.